Hi everyone, welcome to Dollars with Sense. I'm Ella Lang.
And I'm Terence van and we are your two financial gurus back this week for part two of our three-part series on downsizing, which is rapidly becoming a hot topic among seniors and their families. As you may remember from last week, we explained that George and Barbara Walker, our case study couple, were kind enough to let us share their downsizing experience with you, our listeners, our listeners, to hear how they are handling this important transaction in their lives.
Since we accompanied the Walkers through it step by step, we thought it best to present their experience to you, split up in three separate episodes. Last week, part one was all about what to consider and how to prepare yourselves before you sell your home. This week, Terence and I will take you through the sale of your home that most seniors will have resided in for over 25 to 30 years, the packing up and the move to your new home. Again, we're presenting this process to you through the Walker's eyes, as you may find that you relate with them and perhaps take away some good tips for yourselves along their journey.
Every scenario is unique, of course, but so far, the more and more seniors Ella and I have had the pleasure of speaking to about downsizing, the more we are discovering the similar challenges they face. The current hot housing market, the cost of buying and selling one's home, moving from a larger home to a smaller home, estate planning, having enough financial reserves to provide one with a comfortable, worry-free retirement. These elements are and will eventually be on all our minds. So here's the first tip. The more proactive you are dealing with these important aspects early on, the easier the transition will be. It's in our planning nature, ladies and gentlemen. We love this stuff. So stay tuned in for more great suggestions around downsizing. We'll be right back with more Dollars with Sense.
Welcome back to Dollars with Sense. My co-host Terence Woude and I are talking about downsizing. It's part two, and it's called The Sale. The Walkers have been living in their home that they bought 35 years ago in Port Coquitlam for about $239,000. Back then, it was a fortune, of course. Over the years, their family grew to include 3 children who are now living happily on their own, in their own homes. And so their home, once filled with 5 family members, with 4 bedrooms, open kitchen, den filled with furniture, a basement, a spacious backyard full of children's toys, they came to the realization, as many do, that it was far bigger than they needed today.
Having had the important talk between husband and wife, as we discussed last week, around downsizing, they agreed to find a trustworthy realtor they liked and put their house on the market. Good timing today, as we know how hot real estate is. But as they delegated that responsibility to their realtor, George and Barbara's next task was to do the walkthrough of their home to decide what they would keep and what they would sell or give away, etc.
The challenge here was to keep in mind what space they were moving into. Here are some key questions they asked themselves in organizing the move. What items like furniture will they really use in their new home? If they are appliances, do they work? For example, and this is a true story, when my father downsized, he moved into a condo that had central vacuuming. So he was so happy to give me his vacuum. Well, I since know why, because as though it does work well, it weighs a ton. My 20-year-old Hoover is like lugging around a tank in the house. It's hilarious. My 4-year-old sits on it for fun, calling it his motorcycle. But the point here is be realistic. Do you want to go through the trouble of transporting items that are of no use to you, or that don't work, or that take up too much space? Then there are your valuables, mementos, picture albums, items that you consider valuable that you should definitely take with you. Open that closet door and take the plunge. If the thought of doing that overwhelms you, ask family or friends to help you out. And if that's a challenge, there are professionals out there who are dedicated to facilitating this process for you.
That's right. We've recently met and are working with closely Kim Farquhar is her name, and she is the owner and founder of Silver Valley Transitions Incorporated, who are a full-service transition company that will help with each step of your move process. Kim offers everything from home organization to move in and move out services, the organization and declutterization of your home, to coordinate the dispersal of unwanted items, rearrange furnishings and household belongings to ensure a safe environment. All the important things one has to do when downsizing, but may seem like a huge hurdle for some seniors.
And as Kim and her dad, Keith McDonald, who is an experienced residential real estate agent, have said about the sorting process, your brain says you've got to go through it and make some hard decisions, but your heart says you don't want to. These guys have the great idea, the really right idea. They often work together with a client to cover all bases to ease the downsizing process, but go above and beyond by referring their clients to financial planners, lawyers, and other professionals should the need be there. So don't underestimate the network that you open yourself up to when you seek professional assistance for tasks that you can't handle alone.
There is definitely an emotional and psychological aspect to downsizing. It's not an easy decision. There's also a financial aspect to all of this. So when we come back from the break, being the financial gurus that we are, Ella and I will get into the numbers and the process that George and Barbara Walker went through. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. You can email us through 2financialgurus@gmail.com. That's the number 2financialgurus@gmail.com.
You can call us at 778-879-0820.
And of course, you can also reach us on our Facebook page at Dollars with Cents. You're listening to us, and we'll be right back. Thanks for coming back to Dollars with Cents for today's topic, downsizing. This is part 2 of a 3-part series on a very important topic that's the top of mind of many of you in the Tri-Cities. For the next 5 minutes, we will be enlightening you about the financial structure with our case study clients, Barbara and George Walker.
This aspect of the journey can be quite complicated. As realtor Keith McDonald says, selling is easy, buying is hard part. According to the Walkers, it was simple. We have a house that is worth $1.1 million and we'll be buying in the range of $550,000. We have the money in the house, so why all the paperwork, statements, and information? Well, the lending institutions have to be sure of all your information and that it's correct, and they need record proof of that. Remember, this is not just swapping this for that. We're talking about $500,000 at the end of the day.
So this is how it worked with the Walkers. They had a home equity line of credit, otherwise known as a HELOC, on their current house that had a maximum of $150,000 available. $90,000 of this was already being used as a loan to some of their children, so they had $60,000 left on that line of credit.
Wait a second. Let's back up the truck a bit here and give the timeline of how things went down.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. They put their house on the market first in May. Of course, in today's real estate climate, the house was sold in 1 week with a little above asking price. The buyers of the house agreed to a possession date of July 30, leaving the Walkers with enough time to find and purchase their new home, pack and sort everything, and essentially from the day they sold the house to the day they handed over the keys, they had 10 weeks. Not a huge amount of time, but with dedication and focus, they felt they could get it done. They also worked it out so they owned both homes for about 4 weeks to ease the moving process.
Yes, good idea to start with the timeline first. Thank you. Now for the numbers. They sold their house for $1.1 million and bought a new home for $550,000. They guaranteed the purchase of their new condo with 5% down, which they used from their line of credit. They purchased the home with no subjects, as this again is the weird real estate climate we are in right now. General practice is never buy without at least a subject to financing, because if something were to go sideways in your life, like say you got a stroke before taking possession, you would still be on the hook for purchasing the property. The next step was to maximize another home equity line of credit, or HELOC, on the new home to the maximum amount that they could qualify for, which was $350,000. The remaining $175,000 owing was financed by what is called a bridge loan. This loan was the best vehicle to use for the short time the Walkers actually needed to own the two homes, so that they could take the month of July to move from one home to the other.
The costs around bridge financing are a little higher interest rate than a usual mortgage, but the period is obviously much shorter. The interest is also calculated daily, so this cost can build up quickly. It's important to keep focus during the moving period so you can spend less money on interest and more on setting up your new home. There are other costs, of course, which include realtor fees as the seller, transfer tax fees as the buyer, appraisal and land title submission fees as the buyer, lawyer notary fees as the buyer and seller, and GST if you're considering a new purchase, which is, in this case, George and Barbara were not buying brand new.
So the list of costs for the Walkers were a 5% deposit, which was $27,500, financing costs, which were $2,500 or $2,500, transfer title tax, which is 1% on the first $200,000, 2% on the next $1.8 million cost of the house, and 3% above $2 million. For them, it was the transfer title tax cost them $9,000. The lawyer was $1,200, and real estate agent fees were $23,000, and of course, the condo purchase itself, which was $550,000. When the possession date of the old home was complete, the $150,000 line of credit was paid off, and the $175,000 bridge loan was paid off, and the $350,000 minus, of course, the $90,000 for the children's loans was paid off. Now, having said all that, all these transactions happened between the notary and the lending institutions. George and Barbara were probably not aware of the transactions going back and forth, but that is the reason they are paid, both the professionals being the real estate agent and the notaries. After the movers and the incidentals were paid, the Walkers ended up with a $500,000 check.
Funny story about that was, against my advice, the Walkers decided to deposit that check at the PC Financial Depot at their usual grocery store. Well, the clerk couldn't actually accept the check for deposit as the amount was too big for the company policies to allow them to accept it. So luckily they decided to take my advice, and they came back to deposit their account with the investors group.
Nice.
So this is an example of how the transaction transpired with this couple and their properties. Every person and story will be different and will need the one-on-one attention of your professional team. Your financing options also depend a lot on your financial health during these transactions. The lending institutions, even for less than 30 days, need to weigh the potential risks and need all information to make their decisions. In this case, they were lending out $400,000, which is no small matter in anybody's eyes.
Being strategic around how long you stay in the larger home can also play well into your favor. Again, in this unusual real estate market which we are in right now, I've heard of one case where the owners sold their house to investors but made a condition to the sale that they could live in that property and pay rent for that property for 12 months after the investor had possession of the house. This gave the couple plenty of time to organize themselves, search for their new home, have the cash available to make the purchase when they wanted, and did not have a need to worry about bridge financing or HELOCs or home equity lines of credits. When it's a seller's market, you can ask for the moon and you might actually get it.
That's amazing. What a wonderful idea. Lots of info in this episode of Downsizing Part 2. We need to take a break, a little breather right now. When we come back, we'll do a quick recap on the topics covered and, of course, give you the action items for this week. And so take a moment, grab a pen and paper so that when we return, you'll be ready to write down your action items. You're listening to Ella Lang and Terence Woude on Dollars with Sense. Welcome back to the last few minutes of our show today, Downsizing Part 2, the sale. You know what a sucker I am for stats, Terence, so if I could just share one here.
Oh, please do.
Okay, thanks. So these statistics are from a presentation I watched called Housing for Your Future, given by Rebecca Leslie at a recent Tri-Cities Senior Housing Forum that both Kim and I attended, actually. Kim from Silver Valley Transitions Incorporated, which we talked about before, was one of the 28 vendors who were on display that day. Anyway, Rebecca shared with us, as of today, the population of Canada is 35.16 million people, 16% of which are 65 and over. That's a lot of sixes. And it's the first time in the history of Canada that seniors outnumber children.
Wow.
In BC, it happens to be the province with the most seniors. So I guess I kind of figure out that's because how mellow the West Coast way is. That must attract everybody here. So yeah, those are interesting facts. And that number's growing, of course, due to aging baby boomers and apparently a falling birth rate.
Challenging times ahead, that's for sure. Thank you for that. So let's leave you with some actionable items that can help you get you thinking about downsizing if you haven't already done it. One, go to your local dollar store and buy a pack of colorful Post-its. This is a fun action item. Walk around your home and label items either to keep, to give away, to sell, or to throw away. Or there may be other to-do labels that you want to do it. Give it to this child or to that child. You could put a names on the Post-it notes and send it that way. That's of course is up to you what the labels are, but this is a great start to getting your mind into the downsizing mode.
Yeah. Start talking to your friends and family about your intentions. See who will be willing to spend some time with you sorting through your items. This will give you an idea of how much help you will have available and how much you will need to hire out to professionals like Silver Valley Transitions.
And then let's recap from last week's suggestions as well. Decide on what is a good square footage that you will need to move into. So in order to do that, measure the rooms that you use the least and reduce them from your overall square footage of your current home. This will give you the rough idea of size that you need for your lifestyle and give you a starting point on what type of house is for you. Next action item is find a great mortgage broker. Again, you can ask your financial planner who should be able to refer you to a good, if not great, mortgage broker. If you're having troubles, make sure you reach out to us and we'll steer you in the right direction. And lastly, the last to-do item, establish or allocate $25,000 to $50,000 that you will be able to have access to quickly and with ease. This process can be as simple as having credit cards that allow you to write checks from, though you must be able to pay those off within 30 days so that you don't get any interest costs because they're going to really sting. Another option may be a line of credit with your banking institution or establishing a HELOC against a home equity line of credit against your current home's equity. And finally, plain old cash in a savings account is another way of doing it.
So next week, we'll be completing our 3-part series on downsizing with a look at what you can do with the financial capital you have after your downsizing process is complete to ensure it outlasts your retirement. Once again, we'd like to thank George and Barbara Walker for allowing us to share their story with you. Again, send us your questions, any comments you will have to financialgurus@gmail.com. That's the number 2, financialgurus@gmail.com. Call us 778-879-0820. We are your 2 financial gurus. Terence and I wish you a fabulous week, and may your cents and dollars be with you.